Okay, and on to our last session of the day, the Sustainability Strategies Forum. My guests are Pranjal Goswami, Chief Sustainability Officer at Cocaldas Exports Limited, Yoli Crisanto, Chief Sustainability Officer at Globe Telecom, and Sandeep Chandna, Chief Sustainability Officer at Tech Mahindra. Hello to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello.
Hello. Right, we've got a lot to get through over the next 35 to 40 minutes. And I'm going to start with a huge question. We've, between us, I'm sure, seen many sustainability policies and strategies. For all of you, and I'll open this up to all of you, what makes a truly effective sustainability strategy from your experience?
Yeah, sure. So if we take a look at sustainability, we're really looking at how we can help businesses perform better, right? By being able to manage our impacts in terms of our operating policies, right? So for us in Globe, what makes a good sustainability strategy, or how is it really effective? It is in showing how far we are willing to go in terms of our disclosures. As you can see, sustainability frameworks, which are globally practiced all over the world, right? So there's an environmental framework, there's a social framework, and of course a governance framework. So if we take a look at all of those sums together, we have our rating we are being rated by several rating agencies, coming from MSCI, coming from Sustainalytics, and all of that, right? So I think that's our real scorecard in terms of the framework per se. But as a consumer, you know that my ambition or my aspiration is really for consumers to be able to drive sustainable products, right? So that they will choose sustainable products over other products. So that for me is a real measure of a good sustainability strategy.
Sandeep, if we can come to you next, please.
Sure, thanks. And, Yoli said it right. One aspect that I really keep in mind is that sustainability goals that we really put up for the future. Now, they align with the core values of our company. So this is the first thing that we really take care, that where the company values are and how are those aligned with the sustainability goals that we really put up, and then how do we integrate the strategy based on these two critical pillars. We have also seen that when the cost and the profitability become very important, and see that sustainability goes hand in hand with both of them. So a sustainable growth, that means we don't look at the profits being separate and sustainability being separate. Today, if you look at renewable energy, when we are trying to meet our goal of, say, 90% of renewable energy mix by 2030. So in that, I'm also seeing it that my renewable energy is coming at much cheaper cost. So that becomes another profitability aspect of the whole business strategy. When we are looking at partnerships, the collaborations, in every aspect we see that how would it impact my sustainability goals, and how would it impact my moving further onto those goals? Are there sustainability challenges which we'll have to really mitigate? So, and net, what really happens is that sustainability has become an integrated part of our DNA. So anything you do on sustainability is part of our business strategy.
And Pranjal, if we can come to you finally, hopefully we've got the technical issues sorted out.
Yes. So, it's about how you prioritize sustainability in terms of your business. So in our company, we are part of a very interesting global chain where sustainability plays an important role right from the material to the final product. So if you look into the strategic part where sustainability is, we are believing that sustainability will be the future, which will shape the entire global apparel business. And at the same time, we within the company, what we have realized is that we are treating sustainability as a driver for business growth, not as a instrument for risk mitigation. So we have been continuously focusing on reducing our environmental footprint and also enhancing our social footprint. And I'm not saying that this is just a one-term silo. We are working on sustainability, but there are so many different angle to the sustainability management. So one of the other things we have been focusing on creating a very robust internal mechanism to monitor and do the required management for sustainability performance. I think we are in a journey. It's a long journey, not a short sprint. So we need to be sustainable to be able to cater to the business.
Now, what you say there, Pranjal, about the being in a silo sometimes and breaking out of that really takes me to where I want to go next with this, because a business can have the most fantastic, well thought out, well planned sustainability strategy, but if it doesn't become properly ingrained into the culture of a company and the core functions of that company, well, is it successful anyway? So how do you all suggest you actually go about integrating sustainability into a wider business strategy and make sure it has the maximum impact? Sandeep, I'll start with you on this one.
So, I'll just take a step back. I was brought in as a Chief Sustainability Officer in 2006, 2007. And that was the time when, world was still grappling with what exactly sustainability meant. Somebody said it's a triple bottom line. Somebody said it's a shared value. Somebody said it is to do something with tree plantation. So, I myself was kind of confused to say that, where do I move on to this role, and is this role going to be successful? And today, when I speak to you all, very proudly, we lead most of the benchmarks in the world. And what has really got us here, and that is where the answer will come. It is the structures, it is the processes, it's a framework that we have interned in Tech Mahindra. First thing I did was to look at, one is the data, get that data right. So we got that data in terms of full our HR, we got the data for environment, we got the data for governance. So for all these three key parameters or key three matrices, we had clearly charted out what could be our roadmaps based on the data that we gathered. And we also looked at the data was correct during that time from the assurance perspective. So we got our data assured from a third party from 2012 onwards. So that means the journey has been long, but at the same point of time, whatever targets we have taken or whatever the initiatives we have taken, and Pranjal also mentioned it, first step is the materiality. And this is, from last year onwards, we have started doing the double materiality, saying that, these are the steps which are also being to be looked at by the other stakeholders very positively. So whatever we did, whether it was, say, human rights assessment, we said we will have all our locations human rights assessed by a third party by 25-26. Almost 70% of our achievement is done. We said on the environmental aspects, all my locations would be zero waste to landfill certified by 25-26. We have almost achieved 70% of this. I personally committed, saying that we would be on renewable energy almost 90% by 2030. So with this, we have already looking at how do we move on to that journey of renewable energy as well. Tech Mahindra is it may be one of the companies which has reported on all the 5 frameworks that we look at, whether it is SASB, whether it is GRI, SDGs. So from a transparency perspective itself, we have been very transparent. And I think this is how we have seen that every aspect of ESG or the sustainability has been really met in our strategy as such.
Yoli, I'll come to you next about how you've gone about integrating it into the core business.
Well, in terms of our story at Globe, we obviously started with our purpose. Right? We became a purpose-driven organization sometime 2016. And it was then, at the time, when we knew that sustainability and practicing sustainability will win us the long game. It will win us our future. And so from there, we started with a purpose and cascaded that down into the entire organization, which is to treat people right, to do a globe of good. And globe of good is really where sustainability sits, right? We also had to deal with leadership. It's important for every organization, that if you're starting to practice sustainability in the organization and you want to embed it, the leadership has to believe in it, right? So if you have good leaders who really believe in it and practice it, then we also started to look for sustainability champions inside the organization, right? And we incorporated our champions in every part of the organization. So from the strong leadership support, we went into our strategies, right? And how we incorporated ESG targets into our own business targets. So as you can see in Globe, sustainability is not just part of the business target, it's one of the KPIs. It is also part of our performance appraisal, right? Or performance bonus. And this cuts across all of us in the entire organization. So if no one is practicing, you will be sure that no one gets a bonus. It's as simple as that. So ESG is part of the group target, it's part of the performance monitoring. And finally, we also had to take a look at, are we in this just to practice, or do we have higher ambitions? Do we want to be a leader in this practice? So Sandeep mentioned that they have the highest metrics, and we're also very proud to say that we have the highest metrics here in the Philippines, in the country, right? We have a strong MSCI AA, and obviously we are the most sustainable network declared, right? We need to align ourselves always with global practices, because in the entire scheme of things and sustainability, everything boils down to the framework that you are using, and all of the frameworks that we are using are globally accepted frameworks. Right? We are lucky in telecommunications because we have the GSMA, which is the Global Alliance of Mobile Operators, that is also preparing us, mobile operators, in terms of our practice. So it's very easy for us to benchmark ourselves against those practicing in Europe, against those practicing in the US. So I'll stop there.
Pranjal, I'll come to you next, please.
Yeah, I think the pillars what Sandeep and Ali has already talked about, not very different from what we have been practicing. I mean, the pillars are the same, but I think most important part we need to understand that what kind of value you are creating for a business when you talk about sustainability. Whether sustainability is a catalyst. If you think sustainability is a catalyst for your business growth, then you got the leadership, with it. Then the second way of looking into integrating is that what societal value you are creating. Because we are in a business where each and every human being on the earth is touching our product at least once in a day. So we are, accountable to a lot of things. And at the same time, we, being part of a global chain where we are one of the most, polluting industry, one of the industry having the highest, probably highest footprint, carbon footprint. So these are the realities. They are the externalities. And we also have to incorporate things like the transparency requirement, the climate impact of climate change, the regulations. If you look into the regulations, we are in a global value chain. We are doing business in globally. So we need to be really, apprise ourselves of what is happening globally, what are kind of market demand coming up related to sustainability, related to non-financial performance. So I think these are some of the very important aspects which create the foundation for sustainability strategy. And more we get inquiries or demand from different stakeholder group, it is easier for people like us to get it integrated into the business. It is not about only having an ambition, but also performing and doing actively, aligning your activities to achieve those targets. Like any other company, we also have targets for short term, long term, and also for very long term. So I think it is what I can see the global trend happening with many of those businesses is that they really understand the importance of sustainability, and at the same time, it is getting integrated very smoothly into the system or into the business strategy. I'll stop here.
Now, a regular theme that has come up through the event today is the importance of investment and buy-in from the very top of a business. You can have an incredibly motivated chief sustainability officer, an array of champions throughout the business, but if you haven't got genuine buy-in from the very top of the business, it can slow things down or stop things altogether. What advice would all of you have of trying to get that buy-in from the very top of a business? Because a CEO, for example, have got a whole array of pressures on them, a whole array of priorities. How do you get sustainability to the top of that pile? And Yoli, I'll start with you.
Well, I would go even higher than the CEO, right? So in our practice at Globe, it is the shareholders that are driving sustainability practice. You know that Globe is owned by Ayala Corporation here in Manila and also part of the Singtel Group. And both conglomerates are actually practicing sustainability. So at the beginning, yes, you would say that it needs a top-down approach. But you know what? When you're already practicing, like ourselves, we've been practicing for like several years now, really bottoms up is really also very important. So, but to your question, yes, as I mentioned earlier, leadership is important, but you need to engage the board even. Like you have a board risk oversight committee that reports all of the sustainability practices that we are doing. And since there are matrices, all of the updates with regards to the matrices, right? So that they too can be part of the practice, right? And more than that, I guess it is also important to note that in the case of Globe, it's both bottom-up and a top-down approach.
Pranjal, if we come to you next, please.
I think when you look into the where you prioritize sustainability within the organization, I think it's like shareholder is one part, the investors are second part, but at the same time internally, most of the sustainability accountability, sustainability related performance accountability lies with the board or the supreme kind of structure within a business entity in India. At the same time, I think what we have been noticing or experiencing in last few months or year is that there's so much of demand and awareness among the employees, not only at the top level, but at the level where people or the employees are actually asking for what value you are creating from the business. What is the identity of brand? Is there any equity, sustainability, equity lies with the brand or the company? So these are the questions. And we, if you look into a garment industry like us, we have so much of human resources employment. From my company, I can say that we've been employing close to 50,000. Out of those 50,000 employees, almost 75% women employees. So, we have a high social equity in terms of our social impact. And that's why it is not only at the top or at the employee level, but I think what we are trying to create is a sustainability structure, and it is very much embedded within the, activity we have been doing every day in the company.
And Sandeep, we'll come to you on that one as well, please.
Yeah. So, I would 100% agree both with Pranjal and Yogi. See, it has to be both top-down and bottom-up approach. Means you can't follow one approach, because what would happen is then if the grassroots doesn't work, then the results will not be seen. Specifically from Tech Mahindra perspective, the first step was that my reporting was directly to the CNMD. So a chief sustainability officer, maybe it was the first of its kind where the reporting was directly to the CNMD, and it continues like that for last 17 years. I continue to be reporting directly to CNMD. I make regular presentations on a quarterly basis to the board. The CSR committee and risk committee become very important for me. So I give them the regular updates in terms of what is happening. So the key decision maker is the board. So the roadmap, the structure gets routed through the board. From the board, I have a sustainable council within the Tech Mahindra, a very good approach, which I would really say most of the companies should take, is that they should make a council, and this council should have the key decision makers within the organization. And this council I had made up in 2010 itself. So that means my council is of a chief financial officer. So that is a place where I get buy-in from him in terms of all the financial impacts that initiatives would have. The head of the legal, in case there are some compliances, things that we really need to look at. The head of the infrastructure and the facilities, so that all the improvements which need to happen, those get run through him. Then, last not the least, it is the chief people officer, so that all the aspects of human rights, social aspects are governed through him. So this is the second structure that I have created within Tech Mahindra. After that, we have a sustainability cell. So this cell includes my team, which would do the basic grassroots work with the various departments to see that where the gaps are and how do you improve those gaps, whether it is the policies, whether it is the implementation of renewable energy, or whether it is in terms of how the audits have to be done. So a very important aspect would be the sustainability cell, and very good impact creating unit I have created is in terms of green marshals. Now these are the voluntary people who want to do a lot of work in green, and they are motivated for these kind of initiatives. So for every location, I have about 25 green marshals, and these green marshals cover various events, means when it's a green day, or whether, switching off the PCs, switching off the lights, becoming one step ahead to the employees. They would do various events around knowledge that, what impact sustainability would have onto the people. So this is how the whole structure from end to end has been created, and this has been successful for us at Tech Mahindra.
Some excellent advice. Before I get on to some of our viewer questions, which are coming in, do keep them coming in through the app. I want to return to what's been a very recurring theme of the event today, and that's about compliance. Obviously, business do have to remain compliant at all times. That's legally obvious. The advice I want for everyone, though, is how do you make sure your strategy pushes you ahead of compliance, that it's ambitious, that it's trying to stay at the cutting edge of things rather than just doing enough? What would your advice be on that? And I'll start with you on that. Yoli, please.
Well, like I said earlier, when you're looking at sustainability practice, are you looking at leadership? Are you looking at, to your point, compliance? So in the case of Globe, we have always tried to look for leadership. And that is why, even in our matrices, we are considered a leader. Now, are we saying that this is this part of the strategy? I think one of the things that we need to understand when it comes to sustainability is this is goal setting, right? There's always a target. It's a reduction target when you're looking at environment. It's an expansion target when you're looking at social, and it's a compliance target when you're looking at governance, right? But in all of these targets, we are always asked, set targets that are ambitious enough. Right? That is the mantra of sustainability from the get-go. Since day one, when we set targets, when we talked about net zero, we didn't say we're gonna do net zero like in 2080, right? Because there is a time set for us to do net zero. We need to do net zero 2050, and if we are setting ambitious targets, we need to do net zero by 2030, right? So from the beginning of the practice of sustainability, one of the requirements is really to set ambitious targets, right? And it is really up to us in terms of how innovative we are, in terms of how creative we are in trying to fulfill those targets, making sure that our operations can actually commit. Right? I mean, it's also very difficult to commit. Like in the Philippines, there is no net zero target at the moment. But however, our company in Globe, we have already set a net zero target. So see, that is the size of our ambition. And I think it is important for us to think, why are we doing this? The why. Why are we practicing sustainability? We are practicing sustainability so that we can save our planet. We're practicing sustainability so we can save all of us. We can save the lifestyles that we are enjoying, right? And if we have those kinds of ambitious goals, then the target should also be ambitious.
Sandeep, we've come to you next on that about staying ahead of those ambitions and staying at the cutting edge.
So we always were kind of looking at, the kind of regulations which could come in future. Specifically about the reporting, as I said in the starting that if you look at our integrated annual report, about 160 odd pages only on ESG. All parameters covered from GRI, SASB, SDGs, to name a framework which we have not covered. So that is a kind of a transparency we said we would have with all our stakeholders. Every aspect well covered. Then we said there could be something on renewable energy. So that is why I was very clear that we have our renewable energy targets met, saying that by 2030 we would be almost 90% on renewable energy. And we are well on that roadmap to meet it. From a very important aspect, that is carbon pricing. We had implemented this carbon pricing within Tech Mahindra in almost 2015-16. We have a carbon pricing mechanism. It's a mechanism where we are saying is that all the investments, specifically on the green initiatives, are being done from a virtual pool. So today, I don't have to depend on where the funds are going to come from when I have to meet my net zero targets. These are all in the virtual pool which are available for me, and take those decisions based on that. So this was a very important aspect that we have really put it in our structure in 2015-16. And I would request people who are hearing here that get this mechanism put up in your companies as well. And it is good for even cities and even the countries to look at this aspect. So like this, we were always looking at future and gearing up for that future well in advance. Thank you.
And Pranjal, coming to you last on that one, about how we can stay ahead of those kind of levels, staying ahead of being just compliant. How do you keep your strategy ahead of compliance?
What we have been very specifically doing is, I'm not going to talk about, because other speakers already talk about many things. See, the compliance has always been there when you do business. And in our business, we have also very much from a sectoral compliances or sectoral kind of codes of conduct or guidelines. What we have been essentially doing in our company is that we are doing a due diligence about and looking into the future, that how these requirements are going to impact your business or impact our business. Are we prepared for that? Where is the gap? And we are doing exactly a gap analysis of compliance requirement as well as what is our status right now. And to meet all those compliance requirements from different countries or disclosures, we are trying to understand that what are the resources required to do that. I mean, do we have the resources to do it? So what we are doing is that we are creating a very an entire canvas that this is where we are and this is where we want to go in terms of the sustainability and compliance, and where is the gap and what resources we require for that. I think when you give that picture clear to the management or the board, a lot of things get done quickly. So I'll stop here just because of the time.
I appreciate that very much, because we've had a little flood of questions come in for you. We've only got about 8 minutes left, so I'll try and get through as many of these as we possibly can. If we can make some of these answers relatively quick fire, I'd be very grateful. First one is, how do you go about embedding sustainability in your financial planning and accounting? What are some of the levers used to funding the sustainability efforts? Sandeep, I'll start with you on this one, please.
Yeah, thanks. So, I mentioned about carbon pricing. So we have that lever where we are implementing the ESG very clearly. We were very transparent, as I said in start, that, the reporting part of it. So we were very careful that whatever data comes in, it gets assured by a third party. So every year for last almost one and a half decade, we have been getting our reports assured by the third party so that there is a kind of a confidence in what we are really reporting. One more aspect that we very clearly looked at was how we involve our supply chain into the whole picture. So getting supply chain also involved makes that impact, that if you are moving towards net zero journey, how would your suppliers really come into the whole aspect? So that is how we are really involving the suppliers from advising to looking at, the financials, and then also seeing that how they would meet up with our roadmap as such. And our CFO, who's the first person involved in the whole decision, he is part of the council. So when we published our annual report, we clearly showcase what are the kind of savings that we have done because of the sustainability initiatives, whether it is in terms of the energy savings, or whether it is in terms of what impact the ESG, specifically benchmarks, have made for us in ESG.
Okay, if I can move that to you, Yoli, if we can have these answers in around 30 seconds, I'd be very grateful, because I want to fit in as many of these questions as I can. So embedding sustainability in your financial planning and accounting at Globe, how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, well, I just want to say that the role of the CFO in our organization is very important, because the CFO also does investor relations, the CFO also does the procurement, right? And the CFO does decisions on investments, right? Like if you want to borrow and do green financing and all of that, that is the role of the CFO. So in Globe, we do all of that. Right, and in specifically important is procurement, because I cannot emphasize it more than enough. Supply chain management, when it comes to sustainability practice, is really, really important, because if you take a look at the scope 1, 2, and 3, scope 3 is actually the biggest. In our case, it's more than 70%. So it's really very, very important. So suppliers should be able to practice sustainability in the same way, include sustainability practices, embed them in your procurement and ways of looking at vendors.
Okay, and Pranjal, same question?
Yeah, I think what is important right here is that to understand when you have a journey towards a goal or a North Star. So we need resources. That's the picture we have given to the CFO or the management, saying that this is where we are. To reach that destination, we need to create our road, and to create a road, we need these resources. So the milestones are very clear. We understand that to achieve a particular one example is that to achieve 100% renewable by 2030, we have created a roadmap that this is how it will go, and we need these kind of resources. Similarly, when you look into the modernization of our equipment or utility, we created a baseline, and then we created milestone, and this is very clearly visible right now how we are planning our journey towards some either net zero or carbon neutrality.
Okay, and one final question for all of you as we are right on time now. Again, if we can keep the answers to around 30 seconds, I'd really appreciate it. And that's a question from Sam about the foundational frameworks, for example, GRI, Balanced Scorecard, SBTI, etc. Have you applied to your own sustainability strategies? And Sandeep, we'll start with you, please.
Yeah, very clearly, we have these frameworks set up. And everything we do, even the financial planning last question, which you were really discussing, are totally aligned to what impact any project which is being done internally will have on my carbon footprints. How would it impact my social and governance aspects as well? So all these link to the frameworks. And then finally, the reporting is what we are really focused on. And as I said in the start itself, 5 different frameworks of reporting. We have been following all 5 of them very categorically.
Pranjal, same question, please. The frameworks you've been following.
We have not yet released our sustainability report, but what we have been releasing, it's called a BRSR. This is required by the regulatory authorities in India. But we are in we have a plan to release our first sustainability report this year in 2024. So we are starting our journey towards sustainability, and that is amazing that I'm spearheading the first journey towards sustainability within the company. So we will be all those global framework, whether it is GRI, CDP, or even TCFD, SASB, we will be taking into account all the framework and principle inherent to those frameworks in our reporting system. So this will be the disclosure. I think we'll be following a global standard in disclosures.
Thank you, Pranjal. And Yoli, I'll give you the pleasure of the last word of the show today, and that is the frameworks you're following.
Well, if you're looking at foundational frameworks, I would say that UNGC principles would be a good foundation, and GRI would be a good foundation. But for Globe, obviously, we're more than that. We're using Science-Based Targets Initiative. We're using, for our reporting, we are using integrated reporting frameworks. And one of the things that you will realize when you're practicing sustainability, like if you want to get into the different matrices, you will be getting yourself into the many, many different frameworks. Right? It's like an alphabet soup, actually. So SASB, CSRD, and all of that stuff, right? It's all going to be there, depending on the size, again, of your ambition, where you want to place yourself. Is it MSCI? Is it CDP? Is it Sustainalytics? What global acceptable framework you can do? Yeah.
As you say, so many foundational approaches, so little time, and I'm afraid that is where we're going to have to wrap things up for today. Pranjal, Yoli, Sandeep, thank you so much. Really enjoyed your company and your expertise today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.